This is a water bottle I bought a couple years ago to make sure I always had cold water when out and about in London. Originally, I didn't think much of it. It's a water bottle. But in Britain, having one of these is supposedly extremely American. That and enjoying your water cold. My name is Evan Edinger, and these are the American habits that I've kept and those that didn't quite make it after 13 years of living in London, including one that has genuinely gotten someone to call me unethical. Now, I've seen it referenced in stand-up gigs in Europe. I've seen it referenced all over YouTube. Supposedly, it's really big on TikTok. Americans like carrying giant bottles of water with them everywhere they go.
I used to think Europeans are like the most dehydrated group of people in the world because when I first moved here, it blew my mind that you guys don't carry around water bottles.
In America, it's very common to see people carrying around their own water jug everywhere they go.
According to Fortune.com, compared with the European Union, for example, US adults are drinking an average of 57.5 ounces of water per day, while British adults are drinking an average of 33.8 ounces of water a day, according to Newsweek. First off, measuring water in ounces in 2025 is barbaric. Which ounces? The ounces, the fluid ounces, the US fluid ounces, the UK fluid ounces? Insane, right? That is definitely a US habit I have not kept. More on that later. But saying compared to the European Union and then referencing British adults, I mean, you can tell this article was written by an American, but they don't know what that's going on a map. Americans do significantly drink a lot more water than their British counterparts. 1.7 liters a day versus 1 liter for those in Britain. And regardless of the reasons why, I mean, being hydrated is a good thing. There are worse habits to have. Interestingly, America's fascination with oversized water bottles and giant cups and whatnot strongly ties into their culture of over-consumerism, and I think a few brands just played their cards right at the right time. It is much better for the environment to have one reusable water bottle and fill it up regularly over using loads of disposable plastic ones. Yeah, that is true. But also, having one in a catchy colorway that matches your vibe or your outfit that you take everywhere you go acts as a signal to that effect. You signal to others. I care about my health. I care about the environment. I know what's trendy. It's me. It is sort of a facade if rather than having one reusable water bottle, you're having a collection of 20 different giant cups and bottles all bedazzled.
Let's pick a Stanley for today.
Listen, I've not gone off the deep end for that yet. I literally just bought this one water bottle so that I could fit it in my backpack when I'm out and about filming in London and stay hydrated when I'm out cycling. And hey, if being more hydrated pegs me as extra American, I'm okay with that, because that's not a bad thing to be. One of the best things I started doing for my health this past year was starting each morning with a big glass of water, and I can honestly highly recommend it. I get the appeal of the water bottles, the ones with the giant mouths. My dad used to love those, and I was always like, why? Nobody has a mouth that large. I truly don't understand those. But then even worse, these giant tumblers that have become so popular, I guess it's because a lot of Americans spend so much of their time in their cars every day that they essentially, always have a space available in their cup holder for a nice little big cup. A nice little big cup. I mean, I guess if you're going to go out and buy like a disposable cup of coffee every day, then you know what? It's great to have one of those giant tumblers. I think it's just the whole, you gotta have so many of them because you gotta buy a new one. There's a new colorway. It's limited edition. You gotta get one now. I just am so done with that culture that seems pervasive on short form content, especially these days. And you got these trends like sorry, we're off on a tangent. Let's get back. When it comes to conversations, Americans are much more direct. And that is one habit I've definitely kept. If a British person offers you the last chocolate in a tin and you want it, you just say, oh yeah, thanks, and you enjoy your chocolate. Meanwhile though, even though the British person that offered you the chocolate was doing so in earnest, they might find your response incredibly rude. You see, culturally, Brits love being indirect about absolutely everything. If this hypothetical scenario were played out between two Brits, well, the one being offered the chocolate, even though they want it first, is expected to say no. Oh, no, I couldn't. I shouldn't. Then the offerer needs to insist. Go on. Oh, can't leave just one chocolate in the tin. Might as well take it so that way we can put the tin in the recycling. This can sometimes go back and forth another 2 or 3 times before the eventual, oh, go on then, I'll have a cheeky little chocolate. This indirectness permeates a lot of British culture, and though I've lived here long enough to know how to play this stupid little game, I just think it's such a huge waste of time that I'd rather just quit the faff, be honest, be direct. I don't care how rude it comes off. You must understand, if you are aware of these mores and the way that this little dance takes place, you gotta maybe have some self-awareness. This is kind of strange, right? Heather's family once offered me a dessert 4 times because they thought that me saying, oh, I shouldn't have any was part of this little British dance, when in reality, I just didn't want any. They were just trying to be polite, and they're like, no, you gotta have some. I was like, I did that. And so my American habit of being more direct comes off as quite impolite. But to be fair, Brits also usually have the same issue with Germans for similar reasons. On politeness, I still struggle a bit by not being able to tell if a British person is just being polite or they're actually being sincere. In America, if someone says, "We should hang out sometime soon," what they really mean is, "We should hang out sometime soon." It's actually quite honest and direct. In Britain, if someone says, "We should get dinner sometime," what they really mean is, "This is quite a pleasant encounter, but I don't really plan on seeing you for another 6 to 8 months." "We should get dinner" is more of a pleasantry that Brits say that they don't actually mean, similar to "How are you?" Brits do not expect a real answer to this, and if you follow up with a Brit who has said something like "we should get dinner soon," they might be a bit thrown off by your directness. It's all honestly a bit insane. If someone says "How are you?" and you're doing bad, you might say, "Well, the weather's a bit crummy." And they're like, "Okay, I see." They also don't disagree with each other very often. At least when they do, it is in an indirect way. So if someone over here says something like, "Oh, the weather's been really naff recently," if you disagree and think it's actually been quite nice, you can't say, "I disagree." In reality, you kind of have to go, "Yeah, I get that. That being said, I actually kind of like it when it's warm." And for some reason, this little game that they play, they're like, "Yeah, this is cool." They're this little secret conversation. I'm like, you know what? I could just say things that I feel. In a similar vein, compared to Americans, Brits are very averse to talking about money. It's seen as very impolite. They have ways of discussing money, but usually, similar to the previous section, they're very coded and a way to signal your class. As an American, I'm much more open to chatting about money because, well, it has helped me get higher salaries at jobs here by simply asking for more money. I feel like it really caught my bosses off guard. They're like, "Whoa, someone's asking for more money?" I was like, "Yeah." And so they just gave it to me. They're just not used to being direct over here, I suppose. I feel like talking about money is a very good way of sharing your learning about money with a group of people that you are talking to. You all have different life experiences. You all have different understandings of money. Not everyone has had the same upbringing. I did not have any learning about money when I was a kid because my parents, well, they didn't necessarily know that much except put all your money in an interest savings account. And I was like, that's actually really not good advice, because as soon as I turned 18, well, we had some sort of recession and an interest savings account was like 0.1%. And my parents were like, "That's the way you make money." And I was like, "What? Really?" Because it doesn't seem to be working unless you have lots of money. But it's difficult because over here, asking someone how much their car costs, their house costs, or even how much their job pays, each of these questions can come off incredibly rude and or American. What they're really expecting you to say is something like, "Wow, lovely car. Looks expensive." So rather than tell you the cost, they can say, "Thanks, got a great deal on it. It definitely saved a few quid." That way they don't actually tell you the price. They actually can try and talk down the fact that they have an expensive car and instead can talk about the value that they got by getting it cheaper. They're like, "Oh, but it might be expensive, but I'm actually good at finding deals." Despite quid being one of the first British words that I picked up on after moving over here, I do love it. Every once in a while, I find myself accidentally saying the American equivalent, bucks. Just $50. Oh, it slips out when I least expect it. Nobody uses bucks over here. It's very much referring to US dollars, and it's an American habit that I try to fight, but sometimes I just can't help it. If I've had a few drinks, I'm chatting with friends, I was like, "Whoa, that's like $50. And I went, "Oh, damn, there goes my citizenship." That's it. For the most part, I'm a quid man. I'm a quid man till I die. I'm all about that quid, pounds, quid, pounds, quid. Unless I do find when I'm in Europe, I'm able to say euros. I actually got so many negative comments once because I pronounced it euros, even though it's euros, because in German it's pronounced euros. And when you learn multiple languages, sometimes they all just kind of get kerfuffled in your brain. For an American habit I have kicked to the curb, using the tumble dryer, which in America is just called a dryer. In the 13 years I've lived in the UK, I think I've dried my clothes in a dryer somewhere around 13 times. Maybe this is because every dryer I've ever owned over here was shit and just made the clothes wet, but a little bit warmer. I found not using a dryer has made my clothes higher quality just last longer. I don't have to worry about my clothes shrinking, colors fading, clothes looking worn out. I just take the clothes out of the washer and hang them on a regular clothes horse. Or one of my least favorite words, an error. Error 404. Your clothes aren't dry. Even when I was back home in Jersey, my parents were perplexed why I would choose not to use their fancy new dryer and instead hang the clothes up myself. But I like my clothes to last, and it's really not that more time consuming. Okay, yes, it is actually that much more time consuming, but for me, as I like my clothes to last a long time and just be of a higher quality enough, I think it's worth it. So there's an American habit I've kicked to the curb. One American habit I have absolutely ditched is speaking in imperial units. I do throw them in from time to time in certain contexts, just so the Americans can understand, but it's 2025. The metric system exists, and it is inarguably superior in every single way. Pretty much the only imperial unit that I will use regularly over here is pint. Because the word means so much more than a measurement. Pint's got a good vibe to it as a word. If I'm taking a friend to the pub, I'm not gonna say, hey, can I buy you a half liter? Grim. That's so grim. That's just odd. I have made an entire video about my gradual switch to the metric system, as it did take me some time to get used to. I will link that above. If you watch it, maybe I'll buy you a pint someday. Thanksgiving just happened a few weeks back, and just like every year, I did celebrate it. Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday, and it makes me so sad that it's not celebrated at all over here. You'll see so many different holidays that are not British, not culturally British for the most part, and don't even have much diaspora here to celebrate it. And they'll have, big celebrations on Sainsbury's giving you some sort of special because it's Dia de los Muertos. And yet, when it comes to Thanksgiving, nah, not even the Canadian Thanksgiving. It's a bit of a shame. Why? Well, Thanksgiving is such a nice holiday, right? That's why I celebrate it still. Thanksgiving specific dishes like green bean casserole, candied yams, pumpkin pie. Oh, it's just so nice. I really love the focus on thankfulness as well. It's not about buying anything, it's about sharing good food, good friends, good family, and just being thankful for what you have. I really love having a holiday dedicated to specific food for the specific day that everyone is sharing together, and you can be proud of the time you put into making the fresh dinner rolls. I freaking love it. Plus, leftovers the following week are always such a joy. I just finished my leftover pumpkin pie this week. Oh, and it's sad. I could make another pie, but there's something really special about having it for that specific day and the leftovers for that week that, to me, just make Thanksgiving such an amazing holiday that I will continue to celebrate, even if it is extra American. But when it comes to certain finger foods, eating them with your hands, despite them being finger foods, pegs you as an American over here. The big one, pizza. I grew up in the state that has the best pizza, inarguably. So I'm very used to having a pizza with a well-structured crust that is both thin and allows you to hold and fold it with one hand without the pizza drooping. A lot of pizza over here is more Napoli style, and I'd argue it's obviously a bit wetter. If you ever tragically find yourself inside the British chain restaurant Pizza Express, or as they say here, Pizza Express, well, you'll notice the large majority of Brits hacking away at their pizzas with a fork and knife. Barbarians. To me, that defeats the whole purpose of pizza, okay? I want to be able to eat it with my little fingers, or I want to eat it with my hands. It's kind of like having an open-faced sandwich. Why not just add another slice of bread to it and eat it like a proper sandwich? Who invented the open-faced sandwich? Someone made something perfect for your hands, and then someone else went, what if we just make it worse? Yeah, why would you do that? I truly don't understand. You see, this actually happened to me once in Hilversum in the Netherlands. I ordered a sandwich, and what I received was, well, not what I would call a sandwich, but that's when everybody on my YouTube comments noticed one of my biggest American habits. It's funny to see that however you come from the UK now, we can still see you are an American just by the way you handle your knife and fork while you eat. Your fork holding skills are something, and my favorite, brother, the way you hold your fork is unethical. Listen, I'm not gonna stay on this topic for too long, as I have been meaning to make an entire separate video about this, but I'm of the firm belief that 95% of food that most people use a fork and knife for can be eaten much more simply and quickly with just a fork. I pretty much only use a fork for everything. And yes, when I do have to use a knife, like in that clip, I do wind up using one of the many creative American ways of holding it. I remember getting bullied about 11 years ago by some British YouTubers about the way I hold my knife, because I had to eat a steak when I was on some road trip in the US. But hey, here I am, and I still do it. Why? Because it's easier. You don't need a knife ever, okay? It's faster, it's more convenient. Who's watching me eat? A couple 100,000 people to watch my video. Sure, but besides that, listen, if you think I'm gonna change the way I eat just because of that, you can forget about it. One way you can always spot an American tourist abroad is that they're always wearing a baseball cap. We just love a good cap. No cap. If it's summer, the sun is out, I like wearing a cap to keep the sun out of my eyes. That I don't have to worry that much about my hair that day, so it's kind of nice. That's where I deviate from the American habit, because when I go indoors, like I am right now, I do actually take it off, which stereotypically Americans never do, especially when they're abroad. I don't really see that big of a problem with that. A lot of cultures in Europe find it incredibly rude to be wearing a hat indoors, but I've also seen a lot of pockets of German culture really dislike when Americans wear shorts when it's hot out, unless they're doing some sort of sports type thing. And I'm like, guys, just be comfortable with what you're wearing, all right? If I wanna wear a hat, I wanna wear a hat. That being said, that opinion I have, maybe that's extra American because anytime you wear a hat abroad, I know I could pick Americans out in the crowd. I'm like, oh, there go them. They got the really baggy sports shorts and they've got the big hat on. That's it. Baseball cap. Peg him as an American. Don't peg him because, oh God. All right, this next section might offend some of the Brits in my audience, but the American habit that Brits find unforgivable is cutting in line or skipping the queue. When I first moved to the UK, this sounds like one of those apology videos. Where's my ukulele? Listen, when I first moved to the UK, I was much more American, and British habits such as order and waiting in queues beneath me. So when I'd see a queue, it's just people that want to wait. Listen, it's survival of the fittest. That's what I'm used to in Jersey. So I would take queues as more suggestions for people that enjoy waiting. So listen, I have since acclimatized to the order of the queue, and I will happily defend her still today, but that was one habit that took me a little bit of time to get used to, because it's so difficult to see a perfectly good place that you can go that's not in a queue and go, what, guys, I can kind of go this way and then scooch on in. But mate, you get tired at so loud then you can go, I don't care. But I've developed some sort of conscience while I've been here, so yeah. The final American habit I still have that makes me stand out the most amongst everybody around me, I'm still very loud. Americans have a reputation, especially abroad, for talking really loudly. And while I recognize that, I think I can explain a bit of why. Let's say that you're in a cafe in Barnsley. You're having a cup of coffee, chatting with a friend, when all of a sudden, an American comes in. How do you know they're American? Because their voice sounds so distinctly different from everyone else that you find it grating and jarring. And I got my coffee, mocha latte. Oh, especially if you're used to hearing the voices spoken from the people in your area that have a certain rhythm, a certain cadence to them, with certain frequencies. Something drastically different, like some sort of SoCal accent. Oh my God, that's gonna stand out. And you're going to think it's way louder than it is because it is perceived as louder. Plus, to be fair, it probably is also louder. Americans are just more confident with the way they speak, and they're way more likely to project their voice to be like, listen, I got a story to tell you. To be fair, I cannot count the number of times I was told when I first moved to the UK that I was incredibly loud. The fact that some Brits that I knew would go overstep their usual politeness to be like, Evan, you're so f***ing loud. You know, obviously I'm loud, but I have toned that down. Like if I'm actually in a pub, if I'm somewhere and I hear lots of Americans, I go like, try and keep it down a little bit. You know, I'm not. The other day, I took the old Chris Spargo to a pub that I go to frequently called The Grapes. It was so packed that day, got recognized twice, it was really nice. But the one thing I had to say to him to be like, oh, I'm really sorry, was, sorry, this place is full of Americans today. Listen, it's because it's Sir Ian McKellen's pub. And they're like, oh, yeah. But you know, it's normally not like this. But before I am allowed to wrap this video up, let me thank today's video sponsor. You see, December is a time for space. Squarespace. With the new year right around the corner, you might as well get a head start on your New Year's resolutions to build your very own website. And why not do it with Squarespace? Evan, why do I need a website? Why would you not want a website? I think it's cool personally. Back in my day, designing a website was so arduous. You had to know a lot of HTML, you had to know about all the hottest GIFs, visitor counters, and custom cursors to entice people to visit your website. But these days, Squarespace has made it so much easier. You go through their selection of templates and choose one you like the look of the most, and then you change out the images, add some text, add a few other pages for a shop, portfolio, maybe a contact page, and hey, you've got your own website. You can even add your own custom code like I did to make my footer blend in with the rest of my image on my homepage. I just thought it looked nicer. And now it's so snazzy. And hey, guess what? If you sign up today at squarespace.com/Evan Edinger, that link right there, you can get 10% off. And hey, there's no better time to start than now. So thank you very much to Squarespace for sponsoring. Now, let me wrap this up. It is outro time. I think the fact that I still have so many of these American tendencies after living here for so long, that has convinced me that this is just very much who I am. So many bits and pieces of me have grown and changed in the last 15 years, but some parts just feel right. Now, if you'll excuse me, Metroid Prime 4 has just come out, and I've been waiting for this game for literally 18 years. So I'm gonna go have a nice cozy game sesh, but thank you so much for stopping on by, and hopefully I'll see you back on my YouTube channel next Sunday. Goodbye. I'm sorry for cutting the queue for the train, but that's a bit of disinformation, because actually I was lying. Sorry.